this point, is Jameis Winston a bust?
Absolute bust. There's no question. How many head coaches do you have to go through in order to help make that correction? How many of these guys have been there, done that to try to help him with not, stealing crab? Maybe he has crabs and that's why he keeps throwing interception. I don't know, but something's bad in the water in Jameis's cup there on the sideline, and I think that's affecting his performance. No, but seriously, Jameis has got to go. That's all there is to it. You trade him off, he's a backup at best, and call it a day.
Good point. All right, let's go on to Cleveland, where the Seattle Seahawks stole a 32-28 win over the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield was also in a giving mood to the tune of 3 interceptions. He has a league-high 11 picks. Boy, I'll tell you what, things are getting tougher by the week for Baker Mayfield. He likes to go ahead and give out blame to everybody, but doesn't seem to accept responsibility on his own, Rudy.
That's something that he's going to continue to do, sadly enough. And I know that, and all this hype, and I may have mentioned this before, but all this hype surrounding Cleveland and how they're going to be this Super Bowl team, and everything looks, their roster looks great, and they have some first-round draft picks, and they have Baker Mayfield. I said, you know what? It's great on paper, but make it count on the field. And they have not done that at all. Freddie Kitchens should have never been the head coach in Cleveland. They should have kept their former head coach, who's having better success, I might add. And on top of that, they faced a very ball-hawk-esque Seahawk team who scored 6 in the first, 12 in the second, and just kept piling it on. Of course, the interceptions help, and you convert that into points. Seattle's been very good about that from the onset of the season. That's why they're 5-1, and the Browns are 2-4.
Yeah, I'll just say this. Greg Williams should have gotten a full-time job. He should have.
Absolutely.
Period. That's all. I have nothing more to say about the dysfunction known as the Cleveland Browns, except they have one of the worst owners ever in Jimmy Haslam. If you don't believe me, look up the record. And I know you do believe me, but look up the record anyway. Jimmy Haslam is horrible. Okay. And as I understand, he has a business called the Flying Owls. Is that right? Well, he's getting a lot of flying owls since his tenure with the Browns. All right. No advertisement intended, but maybe there is. Okay. Now let's go on to the Houston Texans against the Kansas City Chiefs. We all know how good Deshaun Watson is, but I think the biggest problem that stems with the Kansas City Chiefs is the fact that they have no running attack. I believe they could get more mileage out of LaShawn McCoy. Surprised they don't. LaShawn McCoy comes from Andy Reid. This, to me, is about as mysterious as the Loch Ness Monster.
Well, the Loch Ness Monster may actually be able to score a touchdown or maybe not throw an interception. Or maybe, better yet, if you're Kansas City, you need to put in some run defense because that was absolutely horrible. Off the chart yesterday, bad. After the first exact snap, Carlos Hyde decides to fumble it, giving the Chiefs an opportunity. Yeah, and they led, but for a very short amount of time. Chiefs have never lost back-to-back at home, and the fact that Deshaun Watson was just dropping dimes and throwing bullets at wide receivers just really did not help the cause with no run defense for Kansas City at all. And of course, Arrowhead's one of the loudest places to play, but make no mistake, when you put Tyreek Hill in the game for Kansas City, that did bolster them a little bit. The problem that I have with that is it was not even remotely consistent. Why? Because of the consistent pressure by the Houston defense, because they were dialing up everything known to mankind. And of course, when you have Duke Johnson, a former Cleveland Brown, I might add, of course, what other player leaves Cleveland and has success? Imagine that. Same thing, we have a conversation about the Pirates in Major League Baseball. Same thing. Sometimes players need to find a better place to play that would make them more productive. But I like not only what Bill O'Brien continues to do by putting Deshaun Watson in winning situations and giving him a playbook that has some relevance to what he did in college. And I think that's really understated for the most part. And I think overall, when you look at the Texans, they're certainly up there for a reason, and that's why they won. They were able to air it out. Deshaun Watson was on point with the ball. And ultimately, when you get to guys and in hands of guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, it just goes to show that there's certainly not only can you win it defensively, but you win it offensively, and that's exactly what they did at Arrowhead Stadium.
Let me go over a couple points about that football game. Number one, everybody thought Steve Spagnuolo would be the answer in Kansas City. No, not at all. Who knows who it'll be next year? The roulette of defensive coordinators could and turn in Kansas City. Number two, everybody thought that the Texans were out for dead when Jadeveon Clowney got dealt to Seattle. Wrong. J.J. Watt's still there. But the one name that few people seem to forget about is a guy by the name of Romeo Crennel. Ever heard of him? Pretty darn good with the New England Patriots. Always been a good defensive coach, and he's obviously working with Bill O'Brien. Romeo Crennel is the most unheralded individual on the planet, and as a result, the Texans' defense is further along than most people give it credit for. That's what I have to say about that. Kansas City Chiefs are proving that they could be a good regular season team. But remember, Detroit and Indianapolis proved that there's some vulnerabilities with that Kansas City Chiefs team. And as a result, by the end of the year, I don't even see the Chiefs making it to the Final Four at the rate that they're currently going. Because what will happen is teams will continue to scheme around Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes will look human. So, now, another interesting football game yesterday. The San Francisco 49ers 20, the LA Rams 7, and Ndamukong Suh's leadership is missing with the Rams. The Rams have lost 3 in a row for the first time in the Sean McVay era, and it looks like to me they've come down to earth a little bit. And let's not lose sight of the fact that the San Francisco 49ers are looking awfully good. Don't discount the fact that they added veteran leadership with Richard Sherman. Jimmy Garoppolo's back, and who knows what else can happen, but the 49ers are looking awfully good for the first handful of games.
Yeah, you're definitely right. San Francisco has not been even 4-0 and much less 5-0 since 1994. So it just begs the question whether or not this was a well-designed team from the onset, getting another Bosa brother involved in that process. 49ers being 5-0. Look, Goff, the Rams, not take care of the football. Offensive line, who, where, when? Were they even on the field that day, or did they hire imposters? Because they couldn't keep this San Francisco defense off of Goff, who actually has a birthday today, I might add. Not such a happy birthday when you lead, when you're trying to lead this club who's been decent. Of course, this is not 2018, it's 2019. Of course, Sean McVay is one of those guys who has to ask more questions than he's obviously getting answers for, because there's no protection for Jared Goff, who just continues to just kind of mystify those that are looking at him. So, what happened? What happened to the pass defense? What happened to protection for Jared Goff? Where is that? And Todd Gurley being out, that didn't help that cause at all whatsoever. So it just makes you wonder exactly what's going on, what's wrong with the Rams. I think more importantly, you got to look at the opposite side of the coin and say, what's going on with the 49ers? They're 5-0, only 2 undefeated NFL teams headed into the week 7 of the NFL, which is really not happened in the last few years. So I think between San Francisco and New England, depending on what the quarterback play is and what the defense is like, I think these teams kind of mirror each other in a lot of different ways outside of just the record. So I think when you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, when you look at the defense for the 49ers and just being amped up on the sidelines, of course, defensive coordinator was nothing but, blood rushing through his body. I thought his head was going to explode. I mean, it was just that exciting for him to see his defense get that fourth down stand. But I like the 49ers. I think they're legit. I think they're contenders and no longer pretenders with a 5-0 record.
Well, Wade Phillips is a fine defensive coordinator. He really is. So, and the Rams, there's no excuses. They got some pretty good targets. You have Kupp, I believe, and then you also have Robert Woods. So I mean, when you think of Cooper Kupp, and then you also look at Woods, that's a pretty good target. But you need a lot more than that. And for a quarterback to get to these guys, he has to kind of stand up and throw it, not be on his backside. So. But, all right, let's go on to a couple of other interesting games before we go back, where you address the coaching thing, okay? Well, let's talk about the Tennessee Titans and the Denver Broncos. Jameis Winston's classmate, Marcus Mariota, unfortunately continues to go through offensive coordinators and head coaches. And, unfortunately, he got a goose egg yesterday in Denver. The Broncos came away with a 16-0 win over the Titans. And now Titans are going to Ryan Tannehill. These two quarterbacks between Tannehill and Mariota have always been known for their injury problems, but it looks like there's a lot. Now you're hoping to get 16 games out of them health-wise, but it looks like the Titans are going in a different direction with Ryan Tannehill. First of all, address the Mariota situation? Is he still a bust?
Marcus Mariota really surprises me in so many different ways, and none of those are good. He was 7 for 18. He had 2 interceptions. The guy just doesn't know how to read defense. He reminds me of Paxton Lynch. I hate to say that. Of course, he's now the backup quarterback to Delvin Hodges in Pittsburgh. But Mariota, being the Ohana guy from Honolulu, he just can't read defenses. The guy has turned the ball over more in clutch situations than I think any quarterback I've seen in the last 3 years. I think Mariota can be considered a bust, and the reason why I say he's a bust, in a fast-paced college system in Oregon where he's from, from collegiately, not historically.
Right.
It was a fast-paced, Brian Kelly, led offense. It was snap, snap, boom, boom, let's go, let's do this. And all of a sudden he comes to the NFL, everything's slower for him, not able to get it off, can't read defenses, his checkdowns, and his attempt at a check down is absolutely horrible. The offensive line's giving him all the time in the world. He just makes bad throws. He's right there with guys like Jameis Winston. The only reason why he's not at the same tier is because Mariota has won more games than Jameis Winston. That's the only reason why. That's it.
Well, we got, just to let you know, Brian Kelly, Rudy, is the head coach of Notre Dame. But if you're referring to Chip Kelly,
Kelly.
It doesn't matter. Many years ago when I was brought up in Detroit, they used to have a news anchor man called John Kelly. So Kelly gets around. And for all those people that want any Kellys tonight, Kelly Stafford is the wife of Matt Stafford. So Kelly, we have a four of a kind. And Kelly's here on the MotorMan and RudeDog show. All right. With that said, okay, we'll transition over to the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Jets. Now, like the Cowboys don't know what the Meadowlands Sports Complex is, but they get to go there anyways. And unfortunately, one of the things that undid the Cowboys early was the fact that Amari Cooper got hurt and the return of Sam Darnold. Let's talk about the Amari Cooper injury. He's been their best receiver all year. That we'll address Darnold next.
Amari Cooper was a guy for them early on. Of course, he only had he's seen one snap, and then he was done. He's not going to practice today. He's not going to practice tomorrow. He's not going to practice until he's ready to practice. I think Amari Cooper is probably doubtful for the next matchup for the Dallas Cowboys. And
right.
Here's the entire problem, is that Jason Garrett, as I had mentioned earlier in the show, this is at Take No Punches on Twitter. Give us a follow. Share this podcast. If you like it, you like the energy, you like the info, share it. We certainly appreciate that, and thank you for tuning in. But I think Jason Garrett is probably getting too many free passes historically as a head coach for the Dallas Cowboys. Ezekiel Elliott had a touchdown, wonderful. Dak Prescott touchdown, wonderful. But situational offense and defense, when you don't have a receiver in the game that even gets a touchdown between Austin, Witten, Gallup, Wilson, Jarwin, Schultz, nobody had one. So it really begs the question, what's going on offensively? Because we know who's calling the plays, and it's Jason Garrett. And you know what happens when you don't get any solid field position. That's positive. You got to let your defense, and your defense isn't happy because they're out there more on the field than anything else. This was a nail-biter, but welcome back Sam Darnold, mano-a-mano, going head-to-head. Yeah, I had to get that in there. That's right. Going head-to-head against Dak Prescott, who is his first game back after missing the last 3, if I'm not mistaken, a guy who I had a chance to interview being drafted by the New York Jets. And I think more importantly, Sam Darnold gives him something that no other quarterback they have on their roster is going to give them. And that's a big arm talent when it needs to be done on every throw. And that's exactly what the New York Jets did. Fortunately enough for them, they got out of the loss column to get that W over Dallas 24-22. Jets scored 7 in the first, 14 in the second, 3 in the fourth, and ultimately did themselves great favors. Of course, no real workload was put on Le'Veon Bell. He only had 14 carries, 50 yards, and a touchdown, but it's still something more than what they have seen. And I believe that you can't really thank anybody, including coaching, for this, because coaching for the New York Jets otherwise has been abysmal. But when you get Sam Darnold in there, it just changes the dimensions that much more. And I think that's why the Jets had overtaken the Dallas Cowboys 24-21 Meadowlands.
Well, you nailed it on a lot of other fronts, and I'll continue with this. Okay, I like Sam Darnold. I always have liked him, and when you got a guy like him, to me, the Jets fans have a lot to be excited about. As far as Adam Gase's concerned. I'm not ready to really discount him as a coach. And I'll tell you why, Rudy. First of all, when you come from a situation as dysfunctional as the Miami Dolphins, he deserves a second chance to see